Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reasonably Effective Podcast. I'm 10 Types, as always, joined by Uncommon Fossil.
Hello, and I guess today we're talking Pocket again. Well, we talked Pocket last week, right? And I think we teased that we were going to talk about the top decks, which was actually our plan going into last week, but we rambled on, and I think we were over time as it was. So I think, wisely cut it short. And I think we're going to do our top 10 decks, although I imagine we've approached them very differently. Because at first I was working on my top 10 list, and it was like, how do you split up the decks, right? And then you kind of wanted to, so you seem to want to consolidate decks more. So I had, anyway, we'll get into it as we go. Like, is a top 10? It could be at the top 5. It could be a top 15. It all depends how much you want to group things together, and that's I guess kind of arbitrary.
Yeah, and we've not looked at each other's top 10 lists. Obviously, you haven't seen them yet.
Right.
We are recording separately as always, and I assume I'm not looking at mine. Yeah, I'm not showing it to the viewers if you're watching it on YouTube. But I'm going to open up yours now, and you're going to open up mine, I guess.
Yes, my list has been showing, but I will open up yours.
Okay. Oh, I see yours here.
My top 10
This,
list, which only has 7 Pokemon in it, because I am that efficient.
yeah, this is interesting.
And you have, how many Pokemon do you have? And you were saying what you have,
I
like
think I said like 20
27?
something,
And I
something like
have
that.
7. So, different approaches here. Now, what
I don't know exactly what some of these decks are. I mean, I kind of know. Like, I know what most of the decks are. I don't know exactly what this top deck is.
the
But
Misty deck. The Misty deck, well, it was when I broke out the decks separately. The Misty deck was 3 of my top. In the top 4 decks, it was 3 of the top 4. All were Misty based decks, and they had a set of 3 Pokemon, and all in all the variants are possible. So I couldn't. I wanted to maybe split it in 2, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. So, but I
okay, so I
figured,
think your deck is the same. Like our top 2 decks, they're flipped, but that's the same deck. I have this
yeah, Starmie, Articuno, Greninja, which you can have. You pick it any 2, right, and you stick them
yeah.
together.
But what about solo Articuno EX? So do you think that's not good, or is that included in the Misty deck?
No, I don't think it's as good, probably.
It's
Um,
worse than Dragonite.
well, I think we should start at the bottom. What do you think? Or you want to start
Um,
at the top?
sure. Yeah, let's start at the bottom. We have the same deck here. We each have Dragonite and
Right. Although Dragonite,
yeah.
my Dragonite deck might not use Wheezing. My current Dragonite deck, well, my original one played Frostmoth, and I don't remember. Actually, that my latest build, which was a bad move, but it was a basic Pokemon for 3 energy, and then they're paralyzed.
Articuno, was it?
Yeah, is it a flip for paralysis? I think.
I think so.
So but anyway, but it's similar concepts, right? You have a walled up behind Dragonite. I look originally, if I broke down my decks further, like the Pikachu could be 3 different decks, I will say, as well as the Misty is 3 different decks. And that in that case, in the Charizard could be 2 decks. Then the whole bottom 5 on mine don't make the top 10. So Dragonite was an early deck I got. It's certainly fun, but it's incredibly inconsistent.
Yeah, it's inconsistent. It's like when it sets up, you probably win, I guess, but you need a lot of time to set up. So you really
Right.
need your opponent to not set up, and it's not great, but it's funny. It's like the like meme silly deck, I guess. But yeah, and then I
Oh,
guess we
hang
go.
on. So one of the things, as of the time of recording here, it hasn't started yet, but there's supposed to be a win streak event starting soon within Pocket. So in terms of also considering how these decks, I think, want to talk about how they'll work in the win streak event. I think from what we've said about Dragonite, first it's the bottom of the top 10 for both of us, so that's not a good sign, and it is highly inconsistent. Both can you get your Dragonite evolved, which sometimes it takes 4, 5, 6 turns to get one evolved. That's a problem. Plus, you have 2 types of energies, and occasionally, it's not as often the problem, but sometimes you can't get one of the energies attached either.
Yeah. So I was playing against it, and my opponent, things can go very badly with the deck. And also I was considering, like, it's quite bad. Looking at win rate, it's pretty bad. I don't know exactly how bad. Apparently, Dragonite Frostmoth is the worst deck of the top 50. Dragonite
Wait,
Weezing.
what are you looking at for this?
I'm on Play Limitless, just looking at decks. Oh, and the Dragonite Weezing is the 4th worst deck. Yeah, Dragonite's pretty bad. in terms of like, I mean, it's just not consistent, and it's quite bad, unfortunately. So yeah, I was considering not putting it on. Certainly, if I had expanded my decks, made them like the water stuff, the beach shoe stuff, taking more slots, then it would be off, right? It feels pretty
Yeah,
bad. Like saying top 10, I feel like all the decks should be good, and I don't think it's a good deck. I think it's the only deck here that's quite bad. I mean, I think a good chunk of the decks. Well, I'm gonna kind of talk about tiers as we go up some, but
sure. Yeah.
Dragon Knights, I'd say in like the bad tier, but I see it. I mean, people play it's fun. Um, yep.
Yeah,
And then
it's a fun deck. I'm just taking a look here at Pokemon Zone because they have tiers here, and Dragonite is, I think, in the low tier decks, so it's not in the top, high, mid, or promising.
yep. Oh, and then also in terms of win streak event, I do want to say some people are like saying it's going to be super hard, which I think it's like. So how long is it going to last? I assume it's at least a week, right? But is it like 2 weeks? Do we know?
I no, I certainly don't know. I haven't seen any announcements about it. The big question, I think it'll be at least a week, and probably more than a week, right? I think they usually are, because we're still, as the time of recording, we still have the grass deck challenge going on. That's been going on forever, right? It feels like at this point.
Um, I don't know.
I mean,
Um,
I would say that
Been
this.
on for like a couple of weeks,
I mean,
but
yeah, a couple of weeks, but it's not a very fun event. I will say in a lot of ways. But
yeah,
it's there. So I'm guessing 2 weeks. Don't know. We're also going to get like a new mini set at some point. I don't know what that'll do with how that will affect things. The big question is how many games in a row. 5 is the number I've heard said mostly, but I don't even know if that's confirmed.
yeah. I think five. I think more than five is too much. I feel like five is a good number. It should be like somewhat hard to achieve. I think the other one was a little too easy to achieve. It was 45 wins, and you had like I think it might have been 2 weeks, it might have even been 3 weeks. I don't remember,
Okay,
but you'd
right.
get it within the first week pretty easily. Um, and almost everyone I know who plays the game, even if they don't play it that much, has it. So I think this feels like the right difficulty. I think four could have been okay. Obviously, five is like every extra one you add on is it's noticeably harder. But I think five is fair. I've heard some people like complain about it a lot, and I think it's fine. Like some people are saying like it's hard, and that's the whole point, right? That's the point of a challenge is to be challenging. So I think it's. I just want to say that that I think it's a cool thing to do. Hopefully we don't see toxicity from it. I've said this about in the past. Hopefully not, right? I think Pocket's been a pretty healthy game so far, but
Yeah, look, I think 5 is going to be pretty tough, honestly. And looking at most of these
yeah,
decks, I think are unplayable for this if you want to try and do it. And even the better decks, I think it's going to take one of the better decks. And the problem is you have probably the best deck to play it to do it with, unfortunately. And I don't. That's the unfortunate part. You have it. That's
you get
fine.
yeah. Well,
Um,
I mean, yeah,
there's so
but it's
much
not like super
inconsistency with most,
hard,
like
yeah. If
Dragonite.
you aim for it from, yeah,
Most of the decks are just you brick, and it's I think you brick more. I don't know. I think you brick at least more than 20% of the time. So obviously your opponent can brick too, but I think it's going to be. I think it might be a real challenge. So we'll see.
yeah. But I don't think like I think if you play it and kind of work at it and play your best, you like probably could get it. And that feels like I don't think everyone should be getting the thing. Um,
Yeah,
that's the point. Like if everyone has it, then there's no point in having it. So
I mean,
if that makes sense.
yeah, but if you get to like 3, 4 wins like 10, 12 times and keep coming up short, it starts to get very frustrating. So it's the type of
Yeah, it could be
event.
very frustrating,
Yeah,
which could be bad.
right. You want events to have some, to be enjoyable. So I don't know if that'll do that or not. So, but again, it is what it is. Look, the different events is trying to make the game interesting, and I'm glad. I mean, that's one of the things like with live, you have one format and that's it. So in Pocket, adding these little events, it is a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, also, I don't want to be a hater, but I played the No EX for. Have you played that?
I did have not done that now.
Yeah, so it's really bad in my opinion. I mean, I played against controller stall literally every game. And like what even is that in Pocket? It's like healing or like disrupting like you and people don't like
Yeah.
play this in the normal format. It's like played a little bit, but not that much. Like Venusaur Reaction, Weezing, or Venusaur Reaction like Koga have like or like healing. And they're played
Yes.
some, but they're not played like that much. But I think I played against Venusaur, the regular Venusaur, 3 of the 5 games. I did only play 5. Maybe this isn't what the format's like, and I got like super unlucky. But literally every game I played was
Hmm.
against like a I described as an annoying deck. I'm someone who doesn't mind controller stall in the format some. I think it's in a good spot in Pocket. I could see it even being a little bit more in the regular Pocket metagame. But when you have these Pokemon that do less damage, then all of a sudden healing comes way stronger, and it's like kind of annoying. So it's really hard to get damage on the board. And then I don't know. It's not like super terrible, but ultimately it's I think pretty clearly worse than the regular format, in my opinion. I just want to say that. And also, we're not judging these cards based on that format either.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah, I can kind of see that being an issue because the stronger attacking decks make these kind of more annoying decks tougher to play. So therefore, it's fine to play the more annoying decks when you got to do a lot of work to make them to have them be viable. But when they get, when they get too strong because you've taken out the big decks, that could be a problem. All right, so
Yeah, yeah. And,
go ahead. So where do you want to go next? So Dragonite, you have Marowak next. I have Marowak up a little
let's do
higher.
Venusaur.
Okay. Now Venusaur is one that I haven't played. I don't think I have Venusaur. Part of it is a lot of these decks I don't have, and I haven't. I've obviously gone up against it some. It's obvious, and it could be a different. There is the other grass deck that is one of the starter decks, right? That kind of is
Yeah.
in that vein. A grass healing deck, right? Is what it is. And if they set up in 190 HP, very high, and then with Erica's and its attack, it's 4 energies. You got to evolve to it, so it's tough to set up. But if they do, they're in really good shape.
Yeah, with Lilligant to power it up, I think that makes it. I mean, I have 3 different builds here. I have
Yeah,
the Lilligant build, the Executor EX build, or the Butterfree build. I think Butterfree EX or Butterfree is like okay. You have the Academy to help you like get your Pokemon, and you have the Butterfree to heal, and I think that is solid. Again, I haven't played the deck. I haven't even played against that build, but I think that build seems okay theoretically. I'm playing against the other build. So Lilligant build, I see a decent amount, and that deck's okay if it sets up. It's really strong.
right,
And yeah, it probably wins if it sets up. It doesn't always win. Like it won't win against Charizard DX, but against most things, it should win if it sets up. And then with Executor EX, it's I know it's another Pokemon. I honestly like they don't have that much synergy other than like oh I'm just having lots of HP, but um ultimately it is like a decent wall to hide behind and do solid damage while you are setting up your Venusaur EX, and having
right.
EX is really good in the point trade as well.
Right. I mean, the Lilligant accelerates energy, so you can power up your Venusaur behind the Lilligant. And the Executor, it is kind of the same thing as Venusaur, but it's a stage one. It attacks for 1 energy, right? So yeah, so you're hiding behind the Executor in
Same
that,
thing as in like it has high HP, right?
right?
That's
High HP, right? The attack cost is low, so you can attack with Executor, hopefully a bunch of turns, because you need to get a Venusaur evolved and fully powered up before your Executor gets knocked out. I would think that's the game plan you're going for there.
yeah, but anyway, Venusaur EX is like okay. It's nothing super crazy. And in terms of stage twos, there are a few others we have on this list, and they're better than Venusaur EX. I mean, 2 of the stage twos are 1 point. Well, Dragonite's also 1 point, but that one is uh not as good as Venusaur EX. Well, I don't know, but it's probably worse. It's kind of sketchy, but yeah, I don't think there's too much to say about that deck. I mean, it's okay. You have Erica. Erica's like really powerful, I guess. As just healing
Yeah.
50 is a bunch, but
Right. If you heal
um,
50 and you heal 30 with your attack, healing 80, right? Then for depending on a lot of decks, then just can't knock you out at that point. Period. Or
yeah, it's really good against Pikachu EX and the water decks as well because you're going to be healing off like a lot of the damage and they can't one shot you. But that you need to set up, and they're both fast decks, so they're going to try to outspeed you there.
right. And even Mewtwo's not easy because Mewtwo obviously can one shot a lot of things, but you're not one shotting the Venusaur. And if then they heal up all that energy, a lot of that damage, you've then if you're discarding your energy, so hopefully you have the Gardevoirs going to power it up. So you can lose the race that way too. Obviously,
Yeah, and it does do 100 damage. It's a pretty strong attack. It's not like one-shotting that many EXs or any
right,
EXs, but it is two-shotting all of them. So it is like a attack that is applying pressure. It's not just healing. Mewtwo EX, there's a good chance if they got the Gardevoir and the Mewtwo EX set up, they will be able to hit through you. But um, if they don't, or like depending on how the game's going, you still might be fine. But
right.
that's a little touchier.
I mean, there's a decent amount of Charizard decks out there, and you don't want that if you're Venusaur, because you are getting one shot then, and that ruins the game plan.
And then what are we talking about next? Let's talk about Marowak EX.
Yeah. So you have
So
that at 9. I have it at what 7. So a little different, but again, it's a coin flip deck, right? That's the big thing. You showing it Marowak with Primeape, which I don't have the Primeapes yet, so I have to decide if I want to craft it or not. That's part of it's still early days. It's still hard
I'd
to
say
get the
don't
cards.
craft it.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. I have the basic because that was in the free event, but I haven't pulled. I think I have one Primeape, so it's not too much to craft. But I'm not sure it's worth it. So that's always tricky. It's a coin flip. Obviously, the Marowak does 160 if you hit double heads. You have to evolve into it. Of course, you need 2 energies. It's I went with the Mewtwo packs to open with. So this was my starter deck, although it took me a lot of packs before I finally got the second Marowak. So the way randomness goes, it's very uneven, is what I'll say. So in the build I'm playing is I've leaned into the flipping, and I'm playing the Doug Trio in my Marowak deck. Because that plus it's a 1 energy attack, which is good, and then if you flip heads, you're immune to damage and effects of attacks the following turn. So I just say if you're going to play a deck that on coin flips, just go all in. But of course, for this win streak event, a coin flip deck is just the absolute wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I mean it's not a great deck anyway. Like theoretically, if it just did 80 for 2, that's not even that good. It's like okay, but it's
Right.
not great. And then the Primeape can do big damage and can apply pressure. It's kind of sketchy. Like it can just get one-shotted, the basic, or like if it gets one-shotted and you never get damage on you, it doesn't really do much of anything. But Primeape's a solid Pokemon. Definitely can be really scary for some decks to kind of deal with,
Right.
but it's also swingy. Like if it gets set up, then it's really strong. It can be really difficult to deal with. But if it doesn't, then it's really bad. It just doesn't do much of anything.
Right. I mean, look, Pocket is a more inconsistent game than the regular TCG. I think because we can't search the deck, right? So getting set up is just more inconsistent. And that is part of the concern for me with this win streak event, right? Because you're not always going to get the Primeape, or you're going to miss the Mankey, or and of course with these 2 energies, you can't accelerate energy for the fighting decks. So you're hoping you don't get run over before you can get set up and all that.
Yeah. Marowak X it's kind of like it's like one of the starting decks, and it's kind of viewed in that manner where it's like it's it's not necessarily super great. But anyways, then you have Wigglytuff EX. What exactly do you mean by that deck?
Well, I mean, there's different Wigglytuff. First off, I was having a hard time figuring out what to put in here, I gotta say. And I've run into Wigglytuff a few times, and it's annoying, right? And it's really
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah,
And
I was also considering putting it in, and then I did. I put it in under Weezing with Arbok because I looked at the lists.
what's
There's a Wigglytuff EX Arbok deck on Limitless,
right?
and they play Weezing and Arbok and 1/1 Wigglytuff. And the new Jigglypuff is good. I think that card's actually quite strong, but we'll see exactly how good it ends up being, as it is one of the newest additions. I think it's the newest edition that's meaningful. The other one's like a Haunter, which I don't even think it's better than the other Haunter, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a middle evolution that's not very good.
Yeah, I mean, look, I went through when I picked my events. I went through the most recent big tournaments because there's a lot of like 600-person pocket tournaments and such like the
Yeah.
last. So that's what I looked kind of at that, and there are some Wigglytuff decks doing well. Now they're not a lot of them, and there's different ones that pop off at different times. So I also ran into Wigglytuff with Dragonite, which they got that set up, and they were like attacking me and putting me to sleep with Wigglytuff, and it just wasn't fun. And then they had all the time in the world to set up their Dragonite. So there's a lot of ways it can go. There's Arbok, there's Weezing, there's Executor, there's Pidgeot. I'm kind of a Pidgeot fan. But there's just a million builds of Wigglytuff, and none of them are played a lot, but they all succeed sometimes, is what I'd say. Wigglytuff Doug
Yeah, I'd
Trio.
also say Wigglytuff like is kind of similar to Hypno as well, where you can get put to sleep. I played against a Hypno deck. I'm still salty about this. I don't know. I think it was like a 10-turn game, and I can only attack like 3 of the 10 turns because there's like a sleep the rest of the turns or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
it is random.
right, it's stage one. You need 3 energies and obviously a sleep. Well, they go to sleep. You don't flip to go to sleep, but then they flip to wake up or not. And 80 damage isn't bad. 140 HP is not bad, but not bad is not the same thing as saying good, of course. So,
I mean, I think the HP is pretty good. It's like average.
yeah.
I guess that might be the same thing you were saying, but it's it's certainly it's decent. It's like kind of tanky, and the damage isn't great though for 3 energy, which is a bunch. But the Jigglypuff putting your opponent to sleep, you can apply sleep every turn for the entire game pretty reasonably.
Right, and they're going to miss half the time to wake up. So if you're getting attacked every their turn, that's okay. You gotta get the energies on. So that's kind of the big challenge with the deck. So what do you do to kind of make that work? But so my idea is that Wigglypuff's annoying. There's just different ways it gets played, and it's an annoying deck. It might be it maybe should be the 9 deck on my list, or even might be below Dragonite. It's probably better than Dragonite because Dragonite's just I played it a bunch, but it's just too inconsistent to be anything better than the bottom, I think.
Yeah. I think Dragonite's like, it is it's kind of like the rogue meme deck, I guess, of Pocket. Well, I don't know, maybe like the Nidoqueen and Nidoking deck like are that better, but anyways,
Yeah.
then really tough is solid. I think it's kind of under the radar as well as like in terms of the EXs being colorless obviously means it kind of has less of an identity and I mean, like, who remembers Wigglytuff as a Pokemon? I feel like this is like a very generic Pokemon. Like, anyways, so what should we talk about next? Because now our lists change a little bit here.
Right. So I've got we both have Blaine at number 6, right? So let's see, did we cover
Oh,
oh,
I talked about Wheezing, and I had Wheezing at 7.
okay, so let's talk Weezing, and that's my Koga, which I have at 4. So that's a big difference between because to me, once you get in the top 4, I think it's a solid deck, and I think so. We'll talk.
Yeah,
So
top 4. I'll say I think the top 4 are the best decks. Like these are the decks you should be playing if you want to win. There are other decks that are kind of fun. One deck that I didn't put on is like I've been playing a lot of Greninja recently. I got the Greninja obviously from the challenge, and I
yeah,
had the previous evolutions, and it's been super fun. I've been like playing it with like Weezing, and I've been playing it with Starmie as well. But which is a top deck. But then also you can play it with just like lots of different things, and that's fun, but not like super great. But anyways, the Weezing deck here is not that.
right. So I mean, so my Koga deck really is Weezing Arbok. That's the primary one. There's other ways you can play it, right? You can slot in some, the what's the other uh,
Muck.
you can slot in a muck if you want or something. You can do some other things. I think Weezing Arbok to me is the main way to play it, and I think it's a good deck. It's first off for the it's the best I think single prize deck out there. I'm not sure if you don't have it as that. You have the Blaine's
What are
deck.
prize cards?
What's that?
What are prizes?
Oh, sorry. You're right. There's no
Yeah.
prize.
The,
Points.
the point.
Single
Yeah,
point
no,
game.
yeah.
I apologize that. So
Non-rule box.
yeah. Well,
Wait, are there rule
no,
boxes
I don't
on
think they have
EXs?
rule boxes, right?
No, I think they do. Yeah. At the bottom it says EX rule.
Okay, so
I
so
mean,
the
the term rule box isn't used though. It obviously doesn't matter.
right. So
I
two
was just
point
messing, but
Pokemon.
yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I no, it should be accurate, right? But you know what I meant. But yeah, single point deck. I think Weezing is to me top 4, and I think it's one you could do for this upcoming event. The Weezing Arbok it's a good deck. It's one of the decks of other decks I've played. It allows the most skill expression. It's the close, Pocket is a simplified version of the TCG, which they did intentionally, and I get that, and I think that's reasonable for sure. I because you have the Kogas and such, the hiding, that you have the options. So I mean, like you get
Or what do you
going.
mean the hiding? The
Well, you got the wheezing to you're not hiding. You're with the poison
oh, you're like
of wheezing.
stalling and stuff.
You do some, and honestly, the extra 10 HP the wheezing has over Arbok is meaningful in a lot of cases. When do you get the poison in? When do you play Koga versus, or just attach energy and use the whatever those retreat things are? I'm terrible with these card
The
names.
speed.
Yeah, X speed. Yeah, like how do you want to do that? As well as when do you want a Sabrina in the deck? Like when do you want a Koga versus when do you want to Sabrina? So I think you have more decisions, you have more agency. I think in the Arbok Weezing deck than other decks I played. So that means it kind of it should even out the win rate, and I think it makes it better for a win streak than some of these other decks because you have more control over how the game goes.
Yeah, I agree. So you have it above Charizard. I don't. But I would say it's more like even than Charizard. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of its like damage output, it's just kind of low. I think Muck theoretically could allow you to hit really big damage, but that doesn't really work very well. I mean, it's very expensive. But then you have a Weezing into Arbok with the Koga play,
Right.
which guarantees a good chunk of damage, I guess. Assuming they don't like evolve. If they evolve, then it doesn't. But
Right. But
you can
60,
do
and they can't retreat, right? And you can, so when do you want to get them stuck and poisoned and stuff? That's all. That's what you're working with.
yeah, but there's only so much you can do about it. Like if your opponent is playing Pikachu EX or Starmie EX, and then just have them set up or Articuno EX, right? These EXs that are big and don't really use up resources once they're in play. There's not that much you can do
Well,
about it, and you're not applying pressure in the early game. So generally, I feel like against the best decks, you can struggle.
what I found is, and obviously how things go and setup is always an issue, but if you're going up against the Charizard deck, and I'm not so big on the Charizard deck for this, but we'll wait till we get to the Charizard to discuss it for this Win Streak event. But they have the Moltres, and they don't really want to do damage with the Moltres, and they can't one-shot you with that. So getting that Moltres stuck and then taking two prizes off the Moltres is a nice move at some point, I think.
Yeah.
So, which can happen, and honestly, up against Pikachu, it's tricky. But I've found that Louise Muck, I can actually beat the Pikachu decks reasonably decently, just through. But it's a lot of
So what's
work.
reasonably decently mean?
I think I can run 50% against it with the Weezing Arbok deck. I think
I
I
don't
can.
know. I mean, it's like kind of it does depend on the way things go, but it depends on how Pikachu sets up. But if Pikachu's able to get down like multiple EXs, and because you're not really applying much pressure, it depends exactly how good your setup is as well. If you get the Weezing and the Arbok, then I guess that's yeah, you can probably beat them. It depends whether they hit like Giovanni or how many of those they play for the Arbok and certain things. But
Because the Pikachu, it doesn't one shot Weezing even with Giovanni. So that's
Mhm.
one thing versus the obviously they one shot the Arbok, but then also with Pikachu, you have to fill up your bench with that, right? So to how things go, and honestly, the Pikachu player has to think more in this matchup than most other matchups, and most players aren't ready to think through that matchup as well as I can. That's kind of my where it's at. I think.
Yeah, it's like a deck where if you know it, because generally if you main a deck, then you know your deck better than your opponent knows your
Right.
deck, right? So, and I think that's fair. I was kind of thinking that, like, I was originally I played Weezing a bunch. I had Weezing, and it was like, deck seems kind of fun, and then I was like, I think it's good against Mewtwo EX, and it's pretty
Yes.
decent against Pikachu EX. One issue with that is Mewtwo EX is now like I think it's seeing less play. At least I feel like I've been seeing it less. So if Mewtwo EX is all over the place, I'd 100% say like Weezing is a deck that you should go for. It's not like absolutely insane against the deck, but it's pretty good. It can apply pretty decent early game pressure there, which it can't against other things. But ultimately, it can get I mean, it's good. It's the best way to kind of deal with that. But then against other things, it's okay. I think it's a solid deck. I'd say this cutoff, though, Weezing's my 7 deck. All the decks above that are like solid decks. I don't know about Venusaur. Venusaur might be, but it has some pretty serious inconsistencies with less upside than something like Charizard. But I think Weezing's like It's decent. I don't know. Ultimately, its damage output's kind of low, which is kind of an issue.
It is. Now, when I looking at the tournaments, in the online tournaments, Mewtwo is played way more than anything else. It's like 25% in almost every tournament of the big tournament. At least 20 to 25% in every tournament, every big tournament. So, pretty crazy. The numbers, it's double the set number 2 deck most of the time. So it is in online tournaments a lot. And look, for me, I do have Mewtwo.
Well, I'm looking at it, but then Pikachu's like split up a bunch. I guess Pikachu's
That's true.
played
It
less, but it's not. It's like
it's pretty
I'm
close.
trying to count it. Yeah, it's decently close. This is like such a mess to look through. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of different Pikachu decks out there on the Limitless page. So yeah. So how do you break that up is a question. So look, I get your point. I don't think Charizard's that good for this either. I gotta say. So
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about Blaine though.
yeah.
Well, we could talk about Charizard because we've been talking about it a lot. If you want.
Now let's talk Blaine, which is Blaine with Rapidash and Ninetales, like you have shown on your page, and that's a deck. Well, I've been playing it a lot lately because that is my go-to deck for this grass breakout event, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. See, I was doing that, but it's not even that good against it. Like, because you're not necessarily dealing with a Venusaur because it has so much healing. Like, they could just
No, actually, well, if they set up the Venusaur, but they need a lot of energy. The big problem is most of the time I go first, they go second, and then they get their Kangaskhan into play. They flip 2 heads, and now I'm in trouble.
yeah, Kangaskhan's like honestly, Kangaskhan's kind of good. It's kind of it's very good, but also it's obviously very inconsistent. So, um,
So
I don't
what
know that's kind of weird.
so
But
what are you playing for the grass event? Because this is my only fire deck. I don't
yeah,
have
no, I'm not playing
Charizard.
Fire. I've been playing some Greninja Weezing because that deck's fun. It's not
Okay.
that good against it, but it's fun. And then Pikachu. I mean, Pikachu is really good, and it's consistent. So,
Okay, which I don't
um,
have. But look, the Blaine's deck is winning probably 75-80% of the time for the event, I think, for me. So
yeah, the event's not like that hard, and there's no real
right.
cost for losing. So.
Right. No, every time you win, you lose you have to regrow your coin, whatever you get the payment thing is called.
Yeah, which
Um,
by the way, why is there like another currency for it? I feel like there's only a few main currencies, which is fine. Like I think the currency
yeah.
situation's not that bad, but it's kind of weird with this.
Yeah, why that's a separate thing. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, if it was a currency you could elsewhere, then for depending what your focus of the game, a bunch of people would just ignore these events, and they don't want that, right? They want to give you some currency that you have that's not good for anything else. So it essentially kind of forces you to play the event, which is okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. But anyways, so yeah, Blaine's though is not just for beating grass, which isn't very common. It's also for the fact that it's a single point deck. I have it as the top single point deck on my list.
Hmm.
Um, because it allows you to one-shot Pikachu EX with a Blaine plus Ninetales, so they can one-shot you
Right.
back. So that's kind of sketchy. And then I don't know, it just has like higher damage output than Weezing. It's a pretty consistently high damage output, which is good. I don't think it's super broken, but I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean the weakness with it, I think, is the basics obviously are 50 HP and 60 HP, and they can get knocked out before you get going. The Vulpix obviously, or the Ninetales, which is really good, does 90 for a single point attacker for 2 energy, not bad. And then of course you can boost it up to 120 with your Blaine, right? X does extra 30. Now, it's not a huge number, but you're discarding every time. So assuming you don't get knocked out, you have to keep attaching to that same Ninetale, so you can't power up another Ninetales on the bench. So you really need the Rapidash somewhere along the line too for the single energy attacks. The big issue is also just getting set up. Do you get the right basic and the right stage 1, right, at the right times? And can you get your 2 energies on the Ninetales before you have to send it in the active and get wiped out before you start doing the
Well, but you do have
damage?
the attack on the Vulpix to theoretically give you immunity, and then like half the time I think. Oh, wait, what is it? No, it's not that. It's
Yeah, flip a coin. If heads, the defending Pokemon can attack during next turn. So that's good if you're
okay.
going and you see you play a lot of Pikachu, so it causes trouble for you. If you're up against evolving decks, of course, then they can also just evolve out of it.
Yeah. But
And
anyways, you definitely have like some solid attackers. I think the energy issue isn't that big. Like a lot of other decks, I mean, doing back-to-back Ninetales isn't really super doable, but with other things, then I feel like you're able to just deal with like you can sorry, what was I saying? You can just like you have the Rapidash, which is one, Ninetales, which just attach an extra one if you lose the energy. So you generally have an attacker. You can power up a Ninetales and Rapidashes. You can't necessarily as the power up both Ninetales, but you can get solid, consistent damage with the deck. If your opponent
yeah,
just sets up and is just running through all your Pokemon, then uh, that's not good. But assuming like that's true for most decks. If like
yeah.
your opponent goes second, Pikachu EX, 90 turn 2, then it's probably not going to end super well for you.
Yeah, look, I can see the argument of the Blaine's deck being the best single point deck. I think it's a pretty solid deck. It's not a terrible pick for a win streak event because the deck is, I think, fairly consistent. It's just the level isn't necessarily good enough consistently, right? But the deck where it works pretty decently, I think, from my experience. Um, Now, one thing which I'll get why I think the Arbok deck is a little better depends on what people are playing, but you get an extra 10 HP for both your basic Pokemon. You get instead of 50 and 60, you get 60 and 70 HP. And having your basic that you need to get 2 energies on to gets one shot before it can evolve isn't a good thing. So sometimes that 10 extra HP can be a big issue. The Ponyta and the Vulpix are very low HP, so that's one of the areas where I think the deck struggles a little bit.
Yeah, I guess. I feel like that doesn't come into play that often. I mean, it does, but I don't think it's like, I don't think 10 more, like, Weezing isn't living that, or like, I don't know, it's only 10 lower. Like, the Vulpix having 50 versus the Weezing having 70 is meaningful. But, anyways, I think, I don't know, I think you don't like the Blaine deck.
No, I
Um,
do like it. I've been having to play it too much because of this grass event. I will say that. Okay, I'll tell that honestly. I think we do Charizard next, but I think I would rather play the Blaine's deck than I think the Charizard for this win streak event. Now I don't have Charizard, so I could be wrong. Charizard's great when it sets up, but right, it's that whole does it set up is the big inconsistent issue. Why don't you talk about Charizard a little bit?
Yeah, so I'd Charizard at deck 4, although my deck 5 is, I don't know, it's kind of weird. So, anyway, I'd Charizard at 4 with Moltres EX, and you could play Arcanine EX. I've seen that some.
Yes.
It seems like a lot of cards, and I feel like you don't necessarily want to do that. I've actually been playing Meowth in a lot of decks, and I've been really loving Meowth, so I think, I don't know, you probably wouldn't play that in this deck, because you really want to be Moltres EXing. But there might be room for that. Like, I don't know, Arcanine EX is, like, okay in the deck. It is
Yeah.
does give you an early game, like an attacker that's not a stage 2, which is kind of good. Charizard EX, then you do have the baby Charizard, the 1-point Charizard, which is theoretically like okay. It's pretty similar in value, I guess. I haven't really seen it that much, but I've seen it occasionally. But Charizard DX is able to do 200, which just one shots everything. And if
Yes.
you get like usually you have Moltres CX isn't getting one shotted really by anything except for like later game attackers that have already been set up, like Mewtwo EX or Charizard EX. But then at that point, if you one shot it, then those are your first 2 points. But then you probably don't have another big one shotting attacker behind it. So then you'll send up your Charizard EX and just knock him out and be in a very good position. We can do Crimson, mine's cut off, Crimson Storm. Twice and then you win. And so ultimately, if you get Crimson Storm set up, I mean, it just one shots everything, which is really strong. Obviously, the issue is it doesn't always set up. And I'd agree with you. I think that I prefer the Blaine stack over Charizard EX for the win streak. I don't know. I haven't played the Charizard deck. I played the Blaine deck a little, and it's not like as consistent as I thought it was going to be. But you definitely have the you have really high potential, and it's a deck
Right.
that can be anything. It's a swingy deck. We'll talk about Mewtwo EX pretty soon as well, and I think they're very similar. I mean, Charizard EX and Mewtwo EX are pretty similar Pokemon, just in how they're designed.
Right. I mean, yeah, they're the same, but they're opposite each other. I think when we get to it, with what you're attacking versus what your setup is. From my and like I said, I don't have Charizard. I haven't played, and you don't have Charizard either, correct? to
No, I
for
have some of the cards, but I don't have.
yeah. But we both
I don't know. I'm actually missing one of each EX or something.
okay, but we've both gone against it enough times. We see how it works. And what I generally see happening, and obviously when it sets up, it just wins. So, and you play enough times, you'll get five in a row with something like that. And usually, because with Pokeball and research, you can usually get your basics in play most of the time, and then get the Moltres and the active usually, and start powering up the bench. And usually it takes a bunch of times before the Moltres gets knocked out. So the idea is they just keep piling up energies onto one Charizard or a Charmander at that point, because you're discarding two energies after right. Your Moltres gets knocked out eventually. Then you just start taking one-shotting everything with a Charizard and hope you take your 3 points before your Charizard gets knocked out. But it's getting the stage one Charmeleon and the Charizard stage two. That seems to be where the deck struggles. A lot of times it's Moltres, and they have this Charmander with all this energy, or they're powering up another Moltres, which isn't what you want to do. So, getting the
Yeah, Moltres
evolution.
EX, right? There's a
Yeah,
baby Moltres, but I think the baby Moltres is not great. I don't know. That's a card for another day in terms of discussion.
right.
But anyways, yeah, I think like Arcanine EX might be better. Like Arcanine EX, I thought was really bad for a while,
Hmm.
but it has decent damage output. It's not really tanky. Like Charizard EX is really hard to one shot. It is possible with another Charizard EX.
Hmm.
I think there's I think that's really the only Pokemon that's actually going to be able to one shot your Charizard EX is another Charizard EX, because the water Pokemon which hit you for weakness aren't that strong. But
Right.
I guess like Marowak EX would be potential even with Giovanni. Um,
Mhm.
and double heads, right? So,
Well, I'm gonna what
there's something like Lottie, no, Zapdos EX could one shot you, but
and don't forget
that's
Dragonite, right? I'm one shotting you
Dragonite. Yeah,
every time
Dragonite
with
can
that.
also one shot
You
you.
just gotta hit the right Pokemon 4 times. Yeah, no, the 180 HP is tremendous. Yeah, the Arcanine is low HP. It's 150, which isn't, but then it does 20 to itself when it attacks, so it's not as strong as you'd like. So you're getting one shot by the water decks. There are a lot of good water decks, and that is one of the
With
problems.
what? With Arcanine EX? I don't
Yeah,
think
with
you like.
Arcanine.
Wait, if
Well,
they're
well,
strong
once they
EX, that's. Oh yeah, I guess if
90,
you attack twice, then you'll end up like knocking yourself out.
yeah,
So
or let's think, because you're doing 90, 110, and then Giovanni's. No, you're still short, aren't you? Okay, so,
yeah,
but there is a lot of water decks too. So Charizard is getting hit for weakness, but it's not really hitting a top deck for weakness, right? Because basically Metal is that's the one type that neither of us have, and basically because they decided not to really print Metal Pokemon to this
yeah,
point,
and then Grass is okay, but it doesn't really matter because I mean you're one shotting everything anyway. Like,
right?
and then with Arcanine EX here, you're not really getting there. So, anyways, Charizard EX is very good when it
Yes.
sets up. I think some people, I don't know. I think most people kind of would agree that it's in this like 4 or 5 range. I think Koga's okay, and I see why you put it above it. But then I guess let's talk about Mewtwo EX now. We'll come back to Articuno EX.
Okay.
Um, Mewtwo EX is it's pretty similar, but Mewtwo EX is a basic and Charizard EX is a stage 2. And theoretically, you could just attach 4 times to Mewtwo EX and start knocking stuff out. And that is something you might do. So, like, if things don't go your way, which they don't always go your way,
Right.
they don't always go your opponent's way. If you're both kind of in a mediocre position without everything you want, then you can manually attach to Mewtwo EX and eventually start taking knockouts and trade positively with various different Pokemon. Just doing that, it's not great, but it is something you can do. And then obviously getting your Gardevoir up is kind of means that you just kind of win the game. And Gardevoir probably has the best ability in the game. I don't know. Abilities are weird, right? There's only a few of them, and
Right.
they're pretty much all very different. There's a few that are similar to each other, but anyways, Gardevoir is a very good card. Gardevoir Mewtwo is like one of those decks. Like in the regular Pokemon TCG, there's always certain decks. With pretty much every set, there's a deck that's like, oh, you play these two cards together, like Chimp-Power Excalibur. I think this is kind of like Chimp-Power Excalibur in Pocket, um, in a lot of ways. So, and then it's a similar. I know that deck sets up much better. Like in regular TCG, you set up better, but um,
Right. The randomness, obviously, with it. Obviously, we have Pokeball to get the basics. Getting the Gardevoir set up is tricky, right? But I mean, like I said it's the opposite of Charizard, because your attacker now is the big basic EX, and your support Pokemon is the stage two, with the reverse of the Charizard. So the good news is with Mewtwo, you can attack for just 2 energy, and that's very important in the deck too, because doing that 50 can be helpful for sure. And because getting once you get Gardevoir, like you said, it's great. But if you don't, you can be a bit of trouble. But because you can just shove forward a Mewtwo early game, as long as you get one in play, then you want to if you force your opponent to take 4 points, right? Force them to take Mewtwo EX. That's a good thing. Which I guess you're doing the same thing with the Charizard as well, but you're attacking with both Mewtwo's. So I'm thinking the Moltres, which you're not attacking with.
Yeah. Mhm.
So obviously you get
Oh,
guard.
Moltres CX, one thing I do want to say,
Yeah.
water is good. Moltres CX
Oh, to
is weak to
lightning.
lightning, which is really good. Well, I don't know if that's really good. That might be bad, but it does diversify your weakness, which is good. So,
Right. Well,
yeah.
and the Moltres still doesn't get one shot by the Pikachu EX. So
Yeah. Being weak to lightning lightning's very good, but it's not putting you into like a super dangerous range or anything like that.
right, it's got enough HP that it's having to take 2 hits. So that should hopefully give you enough time to power up your Charizard. So yeah, look, I have Mewtwo. Was the probably the first deck that I actually got the full set of, and it's a very good deck. I kind of stopped playing it because it was my first deck, and I kind of just had to play it nonstop for like a week or two. So I've stopped playing it because I got sick of it. But it is a good deck, and as with there is some decision making for sure as well. When do you want to give up your Mewtwo versus because you're always trying to think ahead in the prizes, and if you're having a hard time with the Gardevoir, just what do you want to give to sacrifice and to set up? Obviously you're making those decisions. So it's 150, and you can one shot most things in the game, and you can repeat it once you're set up very easily. Whereas with the Charizard, you're discarding 2 energies each time. So if you don't have enough energies to attack, if you don't have 6 energies, no, I guess you need 5 energies the first time you attack, then you can't attack the next turn with the Charizard EX. So, the Mewtwo, once you're set up, that's never an issue.
Yeah. I think Mewtwo's overrated as well. I think some people think Mewtwo's the best or second best deck, and I think like it's just, as you said, it's the most played deck. It's a deck that has decent consistency, and on top of that, it also has the upside to really just go ahead and one shot stuff. So it's a card. It's a deck it's good, right? I'm not gonna say it's
Yeah.
bad. Mewtwo's a good deck, but it's not like I don't think it's the best deck. Which, based on what people played, at least in these online tournaments, it kind of hints at, which is it's a good deck. It has very solid stuff going on there, but it does
Uh,
have the issue.
Yeah. Look, the Mewtwo's it's inconsistent, obviously, because it needs the Gardevoir. And the interesting thing was, I look through all the tournaments, the Mewtwo, and as you said, the Pikachus are split up, and the Charizards are split up some, and Mewtwo's not split up at all. So, but the most played deck is Mewtwo Gardevoir, but also the win rate of the deck is pretty consistently high, 40%, but it never gets to 50% in these big tournaments that I was looking at. So, partly because it's
Yeah, the
popular.
overall win rate is above
Okay.
50%, at least on the homepage.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally, if you see a deck that just like super played, it's like high for it does have to do with sometimes with draws. There aren't as many draws in Pocket. I mean, theoretically, you shouldn't really ever have a draw. I've never. Well, you can like in live, you can't have draws either. But in a tournament, it would be going to time.
Right.
But like the timer is really like I don't know. I haven't really played in online tournaments in Pocket, but yeah, there aren't as many ties, which is nice. But and that is something that can kind of skew the win rates, because you'd assume like 49% means that you win less than half your games, which is true. But if you could win and lose the same amount, and then you could have like a 49% win rate, which I feel like isn't necessarily intuitive. I mean, like it makes that is like by definition it would be true, but I think that can be a little wonky, but that could be why. I don't know if that's why.
Yeah, I was looking here. It's won over 20,000 games. It's lost over 18,000. It's tied 329 times according to the Limitless, right? So I just was typing in my calculator while you're
Yeah.
doing it. So it's about 0.8% of the time it's tying, just to get
Okay,
a
that's
number.
like not that high. Um,
No, so
but
it rounds up to 1%, but not that often. But ties can happen. Obviously, is what it's saying. And obviously, there are some of these healing decks, or which I guess nobody's. Although maybe you're not knocking that deck out, or like a sleep or paralysis deck, I guess, as well. And I don't know what the tournament structure is like for these pocket events as well.
Yeah, I don't know too much. I think it's what I consider like a norm, like Swiss to Top Cut type tournament. But anyways, that doesn't really matter now.
Yeah,
But so yeah, you have Mewtwo EX, which I think is it's we both agree it's like solid, but not necessarily the best. Then we have Water. We'll talk about now.
yeah.
I have Water as the second best, but I do have the Solo Articuno EX deck. So you didn't include that, or did you include it?
The Misties, no, I didn't. I didn't include that. To me, it's um, the three water decks with Starmie, Articuno, and Greninja. I haven't, well, I haven't seen a lot of the Art Solo Articuno deck. I gotta say that
You haven't? Okay,
I
I've been
have
seeing that
not.
like a decent amount. I mean, it's like a relatively affordable deck. I mean, theoretically, it's very affordable. It's a little awkward because the Articuno EXs and Misties are in different packs, but
Right. I mean,
still, you got a yeah, pretty strong, a pretty like decent deck. I feel like I think it's better than Dragonite. I feel like it's. I don't think it's a great deck. I think there's a pretty clear difference between Articuno EX and Charizard EX for me, but it's still like solid, and you can I expect this deck to be played a lot in the challenge as well, the win streak challenge.
I guess. I mean, look, first, I would like, I still haven't, I finally got one Articuno, so I haven't got two Articunos. So the game hates me for that reason. You can play the Lapras instead, but which is how I was playing like the Starmie deck because I got two Starmies pretty early on. But I finally got the Greninja now that they added the events, so I have access to some of these decks. Um, I think that, you know, look, I think Starmie Articuno's very good. I was surprised to see how good Starmie Greninja was when I was looking at things. So,
Yeah, I played Starmie Greninja. That doesn't even necessarily use Misty, like, and which is also really interesting because Misty is really strong, but it's inconsistent. And ultimately, Misty being, I think you were saying that hinting at that Pikachu would be the best deck for the win streak challenge, and that's
right.
because it doesn't really rely on. Is it because Misty relies on coin flips?
Yeah, wait, what was that? What's not the best?
Um, well, that Pikachu would be better than the water decks
I
for
think,
the
yeah, I think because the Pikachu's a little more consistent, right? Because Pikachu, it's two energies, it's a basic, you get set up, right? You set up every game. I assume I haven't played it. You played Pikachu, and I assume that's the deck of all the decks here. I think that's going to set up most of the time. And that's a big deal for a win streak. The Misty, now, depending how you have it, you can attack for two, obviously with Starmie and with the Articuno, Greninja as well, but you don't want to attack with that. So,
you do attack with Greninja some. Like it's okay. It has I mean, it does less HP than the basic of the stage one, but it is a 1 point Pokemon. But then it doesn't have that much less HP. It's 120, which is like lower than it, but it's only 20 lower than Articuno EX and 10 lower than Starmie EX. And this attack is only a little bit worse. Like, so it's a usable attack. Definitely something that you could use some if you want to, because a lot of times you're getting two-shotted, so you want more attackers. The more attackers, the better.
yeah, so you can switch them out, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Greninja you want to protect for the ability, so that's probably where you might not want to attack, and it is a stage two, so it's the hardest one to set up as well. So you're prioritizing the Starmie, I would think, to attack in the deck when you're playing Starmie Greninja. But yeah, I can see utilizing that as well. So yeah, I mean the downside, I think these when I looked at it, I had three of the top four decks that were these Misty decks. I had what Articuno Greninja is number one. I had a Starmie Articuno as number three, and then Starmie Greninja is number four when I was breaking it down like that. So based on that, the Misty builds were the top decks on that. But you do have the coin flip situation. So is this going to be the best deck to play? I'm not sure for the win streak event.
How much better do you think it is than Pikachu EX? Also, I'll say with Articuno, the solo Articuno deck, that deck's like I think it's pretty clearly outclassed by like Articuno EX with Starmie EX. So if you have those, play that instead. Oh, and also with Lapras EX, you mentioned that. Lapras EX is essentially just a worse Articuno EX, unfortunately.
yeah.
Its attack is a little different, and it's probably worse, but you can make an argument that it's better, but its retreat's higher, which is obviously worse. And it doesn't have the first stack, which is really bad because you want to like in Magic, there's a term like I think it's curve out. Is that what it is?
Or
You like do the mana curve,
yeah, the mana. Yeah.
where you want to, because you're not attacking every turn, so being able to attack earlier is better. And the 40 damage is meaningful because you're not one-shotting stuff, but you want to be two-shotting stuff. And so Articuno EX allows you to do that better, in a way that, like, that's why the EX is having two attacks. Like, that makes Mewtwo EX better, Charizard EX better, Articuno EX better, Venusaur EX better. They're all better because of this first attack, like, pretty noticeably.
Yeah, no, that's true. Being able to hit for some damage, hopefully you're setting something up to finish off with a second attack, or or even if you get knocked, it's just a good thing to have. So yes, the Lapras only having the one attack. If Lapras had the first a 40 damage attack, you could argue whether it's better than the Articuno, even with the retreat cost, because healing 80, I mean, it heals 20 to itself instead of spreading 10. Depending on the matchup, it depends. Which one's going to be better is going to vary in that. But because of the first attack, the Articuno is definitely better. Look, Starmie doing 90 for 2 energy, 130 HP. 130 HP is low, but it's not terrible. But it's got free retreat too, so it makes it. Starmie is, I think, one of the best Pokemon in the game.
Yeah, I also think that that Golduck is like Stormy Golduck. I haven't actually played this. I should probably play it at some point. I don't even know exactly what it runs, but that's solid. Golduck is a pretty generic attacker, kind of like it's the same as Sandslash, just kind of similar to Ninetales, a little weaker, but these two energy stage ones that are pretty solid. And Golduck's like that. And Golduck's like Starmie EX, and you aren't always going to get what you want. So having both of those could be pretty good there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, Golduck does 50, right? I was just looking at it.
No, it does 70.
Oh, 70. All right, that's pretty good. Because the Frostmoth 40 in a sleep, you could try that too, but you probably want to just be smacking it with the Golduck, most likely. So look, the energy acceleration off Misty's is potentially crazy good. And that's where, the whole thing is Misty's really fair in Pocket. I think is a bit, that's the one card that I think people complain about that I think has some validity. Because if
Yeah, I think, well, on average, it's like, I think on average it's fair. 'Cause, I mean, half the time it literally does nothing.
right.
And that's really bad. I mean, honestly, the supporters in the game aren't like super. I mean, they're certainly impactful, but um, I don't know. It's not to the same degree as like in. I don't know. They are meaningful, but there are definitely some ones that aren't super insane. And there are times when supporters aren't going to give you too much value, I guess. Um, Not that they're not important, but Misty getting you nothing is bad, but it's not like you have enough turns to play supporters. Is kind of what I'm trying to say. But
Right.
or you might. So, but like it's still bad to get you nothing.
It is. So, I mean, you obviously have to know when you want to take the chance with the Misty because you have to always be thinking what happens if you fail, right? Although sometimes you have to play Misties and hope you hit heads, knowing you lose if not too. But look, if there was a card like Misty for other energy types, I think they'd all see play probably, right? Because energy acceleration is always big in the TCG, and right now Pocket it's a huge deal when you can get it. Obviously, right? That's what makes Mewtwo great as well.
Yeah, Mewtwo, Charizard,
Yeah, chart. Yeah,
as well. So, energy acceleration is really, really good. I guess. I mean, there's not that much. When it's there, it's really good. Also, I was gonna say something about Misty. Oh, you can go turn one going first. You can take knockouts, right? Which is kind of like
kind of.
that's kind of weird.
Yeah, probably kind of unfair, right? I mean, I guess it's legal. I guess it's not a glitch in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's like because obviously in the regular TCG you can't do that. You're not really like it's the only way to do it. There aren't like free attackers. It's so bizarre. It's just like why is it here? It seems kind of it's quite. I feel like it's pretty like just strange to have in the game.
yeah,
But obviously it's there. And I mean, I kind of understand like going second's so much better than going first. So having some incentive to go first, I guess, is good. But ultimately, like donking is not very interesting. But regardless, you have that as an option, which makes the deck better. But that's not consistent. Like that's, and we were talking about it with the challenge. It's more consistent with the Solar Articuno EX deck, but not like that much more. But regardless, you will end up you will win games doing that. Some, not super commonly, but you will win some.
right. So I think when we get to the end, we'll talk about the challenge. So we have the last deck here, Pikachu, to talk about now. Correct? That's the the one you have that number one. I have that number two, and there are some. You have how many different Pikachu builds do you have here? I can't tell.
I
You got
have four.
you have
So I
four.
have they all play Zapdos. Well, I don't know. These aren't exactly builds, but you could play with Raichu, Zipstrika, or Electrode. You could mix and match, and you could play Pincurchin. You're probably playing Pincurchin. My list is the one that I don't have Raichu or Electrode. I think Electrode might be pretty good. Raichu is okay. Ultimately, the deck has limited damage output, but
Yeah.
it does. It still is. I mean, it's like decent damage output, right? It's not bad, but it's not taking one shots. Raichu's not necessarily taking. It's like not one shotting a Mewtwo EX. Well, it could with Giovanni, but you can't Giovanni and Lieutenant Surge the same turn, so it's realistically not happening. But I think you're kind of just looking for a Pokemon to fill out the deck. You have Pikachu EX, and that's mostly it. If there's a Fruit Retreat basic, that would be like insane, but there's not. But anyways, the Pikachu EX is really good, really efficient as well. I think like it's so efficient and consistent, and it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it was what Pikachu Zebstrika was the one which I get is the top variant on the tournaments that I was looking at. But then Zapdos, and well, in Zapdos, well, if you can get that set up, then that's potentially doing big damage, right? You flip 4 coins, 50 per head. So
That's
for
true. Zapdos EX is solid, and it does give you that option to take big knockouts. It's as like obviously it's not consistent, but it's okay.
and the only costing 3 energy for that isn't bad, right? In a lot of ways, look, Zapdos. If you compare it to Marowak, Zapdos is a lot better because you're going to be doing 100 most of the time, right? Whereas you,
A good chunk. You're rarely doing a zero. Like with Marowak EX, you're doing zero like a quarter of the
yeah,
time.
I
So
mean, yeah,
that
the
feels good.
fact that you flip 4 coins instead of two, it helps even it out. So you end up a lot more doing something and a solid amount usually. So it's I think that's not bad. But there's a lot of different variants within Pikachu. So again, so just like the water decks, there's a lot of Pikachu decks. Although the Pikachu decks are all built around Pikachu, the water decks are mostly built around Misty. So it's a little weird to how do how you compare them is a little odd.
Yeah, but regardless, I think Pikachu EX. It's the deck I have. It's one of the decks I have. It's the best deck I have, and I think it's clearly the best deck in the game because of your high just the great consistency and being a basic. I think I tried Pikachu actually with all basics. I didn't love it or hate it, mostly because there aren't enough basics that are particularly good. Like I was like, oh, Tynamo was okay. If there's a Pokemon, a lot of types have like a 70 HP basic that is like 30 for one.
Hmm.
Lightning does not. It has a 30 HP basic that is 30 for one. So not exactly what you're looking for, but I think there's a lot of and Pikachu X is very, very there's not too much to say about that other than it's really good. I think I could see water being a little better than it. I think water is underrated right now. As it's not like just based on plays, it's not in tournaments. It's not played that much. It's played. I mean, it's played like a decent amount, but it's not played like close to Pikachu or
Right.
Mewtwo. But how close is it? I don't think it's that close.
No, again, it's split up some. The Articuno Greninja deck, honestly, in the tournament, I don't know what the overall, but the Articuno Greninja win rate's very high. It's coming in above 50% in almost every tournament that I looked at. So that's very impressive. So yeah, it's got a 54% win rate here. So
What's Pikachu's win
let's
rate?
Pikachu's the same 54, so similar. So you got 54 with Pikachu. Oh, Pikachu Zebstrika, yeah, 54, 54 with Pikachu, Raichu, Pikachu Electrode is 53. Um, so these top decks are all pretty good. Mewtwo's is still above 50%, but a little below. It's really the Pikachu and the water decks are the ones they're slightly higher win rates than the other ones. Looking at it, so and like Arbok Weezing, which I was arguing for, has only got a 47% win rate. Now, part of it, I do think you got to you got to outplay your opponent with that because you are weaker.
Yeah, but I imagine the people playing these tournaments are pretty good.
That yeah.
Um,
Well,
Yeah, I mean, and in terms of like for the challenge, for the wins to get challenge, like I feel like, I mean, most of the people are going to be average people. I assume most people are just going to do it. So by
right.
definition, and so we'll see. Like I think it's, and like I don't think I'm a great player. I don't know if you think you're. I don't know how good you are. Like I think I'm okay. I think I'm solid. I guess I'm above average. I have a lot of TCG experience, obviously, but I don't think like the being playing a deck that isn't as common where you have a knowledge difference from your opponent because you're playing like a I don't know if like a rogue deck, but like a rogue or a deck, then it gives you like a 1 or 2% higher win rate. I feel like.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. If you're more comfortable most of the time than your opponent, yeah. I mean, I play less pocket than the regular TCG, and obviously, look, the decks I have. Like when I look at the top 10 decks, I have what 3 or 4 of them. I guess I could play, and even those, they're not like like I kind of have a Starmie deck, but I only have one Articuno, so it's a Starmie Lapras Articuno, which is definitely a step
yeah.
below.
Do you not have Greninja?
I don't remember if I got to take a look now. I haven't built a Greninja deck, so I got to take a look. I don't remember if I
Yeah, obviously
have.
you have the
I have the
Greninjas.
Greninja. I'm not sure if I have the pre-evolutions. So depending what I'm missing, I might just craft it too. So that one I gotta. When I was looking through this, I realized I gotta try that out because I want to do that. I have the Blaine's deck. I have Mewtwo. That's obviously very good. So you know, Pikachu's probably the safest bet because it sets up. I think Mewtwo is a fine pick just because you'll set up often enough, I guess. And when it does, it's a beast. And I think the water decks are, they do more damage. Well, I was gonna say they do more damage than Pikachu. They don't really do that. They're kind of
Yeah,
about the
like
same.
theoretically, but not really. Um, yeah, but I think Pikachu and the water decks are both fair picks, and I think Mewtwo's fair. I think Charizard's also fair. I think it's like Solar Articuno is fair. You could play I think Charizard has inconsistencies. I think the Weezing deck also has inconsistencies. Like I think you'll end up finding yourself coming up short just in some games where your opponents are setting up well and doing big damage early on to the
That
point where I don't know how if you can really I don't know how easy it'll be to win 5 games in a row with Weezing. Like
that's a
things
good.
need to kind of go your way a little bit, but I could definitely see it with like Pikachu EX or Starmie Articuno or whatever.
Yeah, I think Weezing the Koga deck could get there, but we will see. I definitely think the Blaine's deck you're going to come up short because obviously there's always some inconsistency and the damage isn't quite good enough. Um, and obviously we're not going to play like Dragonite, Venusaur, or Marowak. I don't think either of us are going to do that. Obviously, look, you could do it with any of them too. I don't know how long it's going to take, and depending how luck goes, but stick
Yeah,
to
might not really like be doable with Dragonite. Like unless you play like absurd amounts of games. Like I think
um,
ultimately you
yeah.
should be prepared to play like 100 games, which is a bunch, but which is like twice. Wait, no, that's about the same as the last one. So yeah, I think it's a similar amount.
What was it?
There's a lot of variance, right?
The last game, what that because that was for an emblem, right? And I guess this is for an emblem as well. Um,
Yeah, they're like the same type of thing. Um,
and
and
it was what a 45 game win streak. Was that the top emblem?
wins, not win
Top
streak.
wins. I'm sorry, not win streak.
That'll be the next event, 45 game win
So
streak. Um,
wins. So if you're
Yeah,
winning,
there was 50 for a challenge as well, but that's not the emblem. It was 45. So, um,
and so a lot of people, most people, I assume, accomplished it, and I'm sure you could have done 100 games within it over that time period, probably when
yeah,
it
I
was
think,
active.
yeah. So I think ultimately, I'd say like if you want to essentially guarantee that you'll get it, I don't remember the math. I was kind of like looking at the math, and I got like confused. I don't know. I didn't really do it that much, but um, I feel like if you do, like, I don't know, just play as much as you want. I think I mean it's a game. The
Yeah.
emblems do they matter that much? No.
Oh, come
So
on. I do have one piece of advice though. Pick a deck you want and play it consistently. You can switch if you think you need to, but don't like switch all the time. Don't switch every 2 or 3 games because this deck didn't set up. And I was weak into my last opponent, so I gotta don't be like chasing the perfect deck because that usually gets you in a bad spot. Play one deck for a while, 10, 15, 20 games probably, if it's a good deck. And then after that, if you need to switch, go ahead and switch. But, don't be, I think cycling decks all the time puts you in a bad spot.
yeah, it definitely could. I mean, I'm someone who generally likes to switch up decks, but I probably won't be doing that. I've enjoyed the pocket meta as well. So um,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Obviously, it depends whether you get the stuff you want, and we'll see what it looks like with the next expansion. Even the mini set, I think the mini set's going to have a massive impact on the game, and going to really the next two, like the mini set, the mini expansion. I think by the end of of January, we'll know what Pocket is. Right now, I don't think we know exactly what Pocket is.
Oh yeah, when the next full set comes out, and we'll have trading, and we'll find out. I guess trading will expand, but we'll get a sense of what they think trading is going to be. Because look, in terms of a healthy meta, I'm looking. When you look at the full deck list and limit list, there's 921 decks that have been played in tournaments. So way more
Well,
diverse than
that's
the TCG. That's
yeah, no,
something,
that's
isn't it?
actually I've talked about this before. If you don't know, so we're looking at Limitless TCG is a great website. I highly recommend. This is actually Play Limitless, and there's resources on the regular TCG and the in Pocket, as well as some other TCGs, but and the video game as well. But it's not like great video game resources. There are definitely better resources for that, but
Right.
which I don't know. I don't know what they are. But the TCG, you can see there are in a total of with the newest set 128 decks that have been played at least once. And there's this big deck called Other, which is other random stuff. Pocket does not have that. The regular TCG, the decks are somewhat like they're classified based on something that I think was probably created by the Limitless team, where they're like, okay, this deck has these cards in it, but then. And if you look at Japanese online or Japanese City League tournaments, it's the same way as the as Pocket, where the decks are assigned based on just the cards that are. Oh, I messed up. Assigned based on just the cards that are in the deck. So you have a weird stuff. Like one of the decks with the highest win rates is it's like Blastoise EX and Mewtwo, which what is that? And if you look at regular Limitless, you can see I was looking at what decks played the supporter Black Belt or Black Belt's training, and the Pokemon on it were like Terapagos and Luminion. Um, so
Right.
do you know what that deck is?
I don't. I'm looking at the top pocket deck here. It is Blastoise and Minchao. So I'm,
Oh, my
getting
favorite.
inspired by that.
Oh yeah.
So,
So also there's some like alternate format.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah. Because
yeah.
the other ones are 000. What on earth is that?
I
Anyways.
guess they got to buy, or I don't know. They never play
Well, no, if
that.
they get a buy, then they wouldn't be. I think. Oh no, this is they have a. I think they. I don't know. I don't. Some glitch. This person is 0-5, but I don't know. Anyways, so I guess they like didn't show up to any of their games.
Yeah, I don't know,
Probably.
but we have one deck that played what they won one game and they dropped, and so it is perfect. But yeah, there are events also if you look at it that are non-standard decks events, right? There's like no EX events and stuff, so you got to pay attention when you're looking at Limitless just to make sure that it's a tournament that's relevant to what you want to know.
Yeah, like one of the best decks that says is Dragonair, which obviously is not one of the best decks. In Machoke, like what? An Ivysaur. So obviously that's not what you're looking for. If you do group the decks together, there's only a set amount because there's only so many Pokemon in the game. Um, anyways, that's all for today's episode of the podcast. Check us out on podcasting platforms or on YouTube, youtube.com/@10types or /@uncommonfossil with 1M. And
Thank
you
you.
can comment down below if you have any questions for our lists. And when mine's right, of course. No, they're right. They're pretty similar. They're pretty similar lists. A few differences, but
Yeah, I mean,
I think the meta's cool.
look, there's diversity in the meta, and most of our differences were some of the lower decks, and it's much harder to judge that. So anyway, hopefully, this new win streak event, hopefully it's fun for everyone, and can let us know what deck you're running, and you can let us know as the event starts how you're doing with things. And anyway, hope you enjoyed the podcast, and take care.
See ya.